It's Jason Gould, Administrator with Development Services. Welcome to Science 201. This is our second lunch and learn. Hopefully this one, we've invited some other departments and we're looking to try and clarify some of our specialty processes. Next slide. So this first, and we're going to make this presentation available online. This will all be recorded and everything will be available online. So if you need to reference something, you can. I want to point out our science page. It's got links to all of these places that we're going through just on the website. So you've got access to whatever you need here. You've also got contacts for our team, the science team. I'd like to introduce Scott Roper. He's our senior plans examiner. And then we've got our inspection staff back in the back, Oscar Lozoya, our senior inspector, Mike Martin, Miguel Salas, and our newest inspector, Trevor Lumsden. Next slide. So the other tool I want to give you up front is our zoning map. We've updated this quite a bit. There's lots of new layers. We've actually incorporated a billboard layer. So if anybody gets involved with that, we're looking to do an authorized hearing coming up. But there is a billboard layer on there now that distinguishes digital from static billboards all around the city. It's also got links to all the zoning for every area, and all of your specialty processes are going to be determined from this site. We've got a video tutorial that'll teach you how to use it if you need it. And again, if you have any questions, just give us a call. All right, so this is kind of overview of the presentation. We'll talk a little bit about special provision sign districts. And then we've got Kate Singleton here from the Landmark or Office of Historic Preservation to talk about historic districts. We've got Marie Gordon from Right of Way and Real Estate Public Works to talk about right of way agreements. We've got Scott Belland from Conservation Districts, and I'll be speaking on board adjustment. So again, the purpose of this is to give you guys some resources and make you aware and introduce you to some of the staff that's involved in some of the specialty sign processes. Of these, we've got certificate of appropriateness or certificates of appropriateness, right-of-way license, CD work reviews, and variances and special exceptions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Roper, the senior plans examiner. He's going to kind of be heading up the sign team. And he's going to move forward with special provision sign districts.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott. We're going to start with resources. Just a quick overview. And like Jason said, this will all be available, and these are all clickable links that can take you straight to all of these resources. First is Chapter 51A, Article 7. That's our sign regulations for the city of Dallas. 51A 7.500 is the provisions for special provision sign districts. 7.900 through 7.2300 are the specific SPSD provisions for each individual special provision sign district. The special provision sign district page, submittal checklist, which comes in handy, submission schedule, city plan commission page, and current plan commissioners. Currently, Dallas has 15 special provision sign districts. They're all listed here and mapped out. SPSDs are overlay districts that modify sign provisions to enhance, preserve, and develop the character of and the potential of an area. To ensure signs remain consistent with the purpose of an SPSD, all signs, unless specified, require a certificate of appropriateness. Review procedures for SPSD CAs include director procedure, which is expedited, or committee procedure, which requires additional review time and a fee is required. These are completed as a part of the sign permit application, so there's no additional application needed. So for director procedure, this is the criteria, and what this means is we can we can approve at our level without having to go to the committee. So it cannot be located in the historic district. West End is an example of this. Every sign in West End has to go to committee. It has to be less than or equal to 50 square feet, less than or equal to 15% of the facade for attached signs. Projection has to be less than or equal to 18 inches into the public right of way for attached signs. And all detached signs have to have at least a 10-foot setback. And overall height of less than or equal to 25 feet. It cannot have changeable messages. And then if you look at page 3 of the submittal checklist that's provided, and it's also linked here, it'll give all of these exceptions. If it does not meet the requirements for director approval, it'll have to go to committee. This is committee procedure. So you'll have the application submittal. There's the certificate of appropriateness process is incorporated with the sign permit process, meaning once you submit an application for a sign permit, if we, after review, if we determine that it needs a CA, we'll respond to you with that information, and you'll have to provide all the documents that are necessary in the checklist. And we'll walk you through it from there. Signs that do not meet the requirements as outlined in 51A-7.5053 will be required to obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the City Planning Commission. And this is the 51A-7.5053 is director approval. So committee procedure continued. Submittal deadline is at noon on the Friday following the SSDC meeting for the previous month. And there's a link here to our submission schedule. For instance, today, several minutes ago, was the cutoff for the next SSDAC. Applications must be completed and correct. All fees paid to be accepted, and that's all by the deadline. The fee is $345 per sign. That's in addition to your permit fees. And it generally takes 2 to 3 months to process from start to end. So the checklist, and here's another link. We provided the links multiple places for your convenience. Committee procedure checklist. Some required items not typically to a sign permit are the location map. And this is just a general overhead location of the sign, its location, where it's attached, just brief information. Detailed description of materials and colors. We're normally pretty lenient on this, except for SPSD cases that you need to be very specific. To the point of, if you're using 3M vinyl, we want 3M in the color code. So very specific. Height and length of each word, stamped engineering for all projecting and detached signs, and owner and tenant officer list. And we provide a template of how that should look. Committee procedure continued. Special Sign District Advisory Committee. This is referred to as the SSDAC. This meets second Tuesday of every month. There's 5 appointed members to include 1 architect, 1 graphic designer, and 1 sign industry representative. The point of the SSDAC is to evaluate and provide guidance on the character, special conditions, and economics of each sign district. CPC public hearing is on the 1st and 3rd Thursday of the month. CAs are typically reviewed the 1st Thursday of the month following an SSDAC recommendation. CPC has the final approval or denial of a CA. The general timeframe is 2 to 3 months. So we review the permits to make sure that they're in line with the ordinance and legal. And once we make that determination, we put it on the agenda. SSDAC looks at it closer, and they determine whether they think it is appropriate for the area. And then they'll make their recommendation to CPC, and they have the final say so. We also have the Arts District Special Advisory Committee, ADSAC. It follows the same structure and schedule as SSDAC, 1 to 2 months. It's exclusive to the Arts District Sign District. is required for all signs in the Arts District, regardless of size. And the advisory to the director only. So there's no CPC included with these AdSAC signs. So it goes straight from AdSAC to approval if it's approved. Review criteria for the committees and commission. Signs must meet all code provisions for the district. Committee determines if sufficient information has been provided to make an informed decision. And if the proposed sign is appropriate and consistent with the special character of the district. This includes additional emphasis on the sign's effect on the economic structure of the district and surrounding premises without regard to the sign's message. This is what I was referring to previously. So we look at whether the ordinance allows it. They look at whether it fits the area. It's suitable. Action is required within 60 days. If no action has been taken by the city within 60 days of the receipt of an application, the application is deemed approved. And actions include any motion made on an item in the public meeting. This has happened in the past. It's not often. But in the event that a meeting is canceled and we're not able to reschedule, this is what would happen. It would be automatically approved. After CA is approved, changes will require resubmittal and re-review under the original procedure. So you cannot make changes after a application has been submitted. Appeal to council. Appeals can be made to the city council within 60 days of the date of the decision by the commission. So if they deny it, you can appeal it within 60 days. Section 51A-7.507 provides for temporary sign display while applications are being reviewed under the committee procedure. So committee procedure can take 2 to 3 months at times. So we do allow for a temporary banner to go up in the meantime. That's approved at director level, so it can be approved within 48 hours, typically same day. Temporary signs must be banners. They may not be larger than a permanent sign that's under review, and it may not be the same sign under review, meaning this is temporary. You cannot use this process to skirt the CPC. Temporary sign permits expire 60 days from issue, and they're not eligible for renewal or reissue. So once they're approved, you have 60 days. After that, they have to come down and you have to wait from that point for the permanent sign to be approved. This is a chart. You may not be able to see it very well, but this is a pretty good resource for you to use. Everything on here is a clickable link. This is the list of all of our SPSDs. The link will take you directly to that part of the ordinance that covers that SPSD. That way you don't do a digging around because they are kind of hard to find sometimes if you're not used to it. So this will give you a short answer if this SPSD requires a committee review by CPC, or if you have the option of a director review, because some areas do not allow for director approval. Some areas, everything has to go to CPC. So there's a couple of notes in here, but for instance, if you look at downtown sub-districts, everything goes to committee. You can get a director approval, but only for attached signs. Detached signs, regardless of whether they meet the criteria or not, have to go to CPC. Like West End needs committee approval, and director approval is not an option. So it has to go through the entire process. So this is just a quick little reference chart for you with links to, and also if you see a top committee and director, these are hyperlinks that take you to the committee review process of the ordinance and director approval process of the ordinance. So if you need to refer to any of that. So the next presenter will be Kate Singleton.
So Kate is with the Office of Historic Preservation, and again, like Scott said, some of the SPSD AAA historic districts, some districts are not SPSDs, but still have historic district procedures. And please welcome Kate to go over Office of Historic Preservation procedures and landmark approval.
Okay, so I ran in from another meeting to be with you all today. So I just wanted to say hello. I'm relatively new back at the city, but this is my 5th time there, 2nd time running the program. I'm not going to go into as much detail because we have a wonderful website that you can go to. And if you're interested in finding out which historic districts, where if you're working with signage, where the districts are. The other thing is it has our contact information, and when in doubt, give us a call or shoot us an email, because we'd be happy to work with you on whatever it is that you need help with. That's kind of a deal for us. One thing I want you to also be cognizant of is what we do is very similar to what we just heard described as far as our process for a certificate of appropriateness. Please remember this: there are buildings that have historic signs attached to them, like Adams Hats, which is that is locally designated as an individual landmark. It's also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The other thing is, like, when you look at the Magnolia Building, the flying red horse would fall under the purview of the Landmark Commission because the building and the sign are both designated. Oops, wrong way. I just finished a huge thing of coffee this morning. Yeah, I haven't eaten much breakfast, so we're off to the races today. So again, we do all exterior work for a historic district, which can include signs, requires a certificate of appropriateness. The routine maintenance ones, say you have a sign that you're dealing with and it just needs a new coat of paint, or the neon has broken or something like that, then we can do routine maintenance. That means at a staff level, one of my staff members will work with you and it will be taken care of pretty quickly. The standard or landmark commission ones, we have up to 65 days to review. And again, these are state law things on the time period. So just want you to be cognizant of these. And so what would happen is, if you were installing a sign on one of the historic buildings in, say, the West End, or say Harwood Historic District downtown, or Little Stone Place Historic District, you would come in and meet with staff and let us know what was going on. Or if you have somebody coming through your shop who is going to do something like this, then you come and talk to us first. We, like everybody else, if you are going to do work, you're going to building inspection, if you're pulling any kind of permits, you're going to have to come to us first, because they won't issue usually a permit without you come. If it's in a historic district or historically designated, they will not issue a building permit or any kind of permitting, no matter who it is, until you've come and talked to all of us that you're supposed to talk to. I put 5B North because that's where we used to be. It's 5C North. You can submit to the planners by email or in person. Again, we strongly encourage you to come in early and often in any kind of process you have that may deal with historic districts. We tell these to our applicants out in the neighborhood, to developers. You saw the South Side on Lamar slide that was shown. I actually was consultant on that project. It was one of the few times I wasn't working for the city. And so that sign is actually mounted on the historic, where it used to say Sears. That's actually the historic infrastructure where they put South Side on Lamar, and we negotiated like I say, the developer and I negotiated with the city to be able to put that neon sign back up there because the Sears sign was so important to the community and to the city. Let's see what else I have for you. Again, we strongly encourage that no matter who you're working with or if it's you guys, to please engage with the staff early and often. Our phone numbers on the website, our names and emails are all on the website. If you don't know which districts it is in, just call the main number and we'll parse you out to whomever is there. The appropriate person. Like I say, most of our historic districts, much like Scott's going to talk to you, we have a lot of mainly residential historic districts. Some of our residentials do have a small commercial strip in them. And so what we call the old trolley stop retail. So we may get signs occasionally for those. Each historic district has its own designs, standards. Signs are usually included. If they are not included, they will refer to the main sign ordinance. One thing that I do want you to think about, again, is please engage with us early on that and get in touch. The West End is one of the unusual ones because it has several layers. It's got the West End Historic District, which has the sign portion in it, and then you have the special sign district for that one. I don't think Harwood. So Harwood and Fair Park are also historic district. One thing, if you ever deal with anything in Fair Park, there are a couple of things you need to know. It's not only a City of Dallas landmark, but it's a National Historic District or landmark, which means the National Park Service deals with that, and the Texas Historical Commission, because it falls under state antiquities code. So that's something that's a three-peat. So if you do any signage and all, we have to work within that parameter for Fair Park. Believe me, when it comes to the fair and stuff, we work really hard to take care of that early and often. Individual designations can, like I said before, also include buildings like the Magnolia, which has the Flying Red Horse, or the clock tower on the Mercantile. And so those are significant in Dallas. There are also other signs that fall into our purview from the Landmark Commission and for historic designation. One thing you should know is we, like everybody else, have a schedule of meetings. So I'll tell you, just basically, the thing you should know is if it has to go to Landmark Commission, it's the first Monday of the month. Except if it's September or January, where we have New Year's Day fall on our Monday, or we have the Labor Day holiday, then it will be this time, September 5th. The other thing to know about that is that we have design task forces, and so a certificate of appropriateness is always due the first Thursday of the month, because staff reviews it and then it goes to our design task forces for the neighborhoods. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. Yes.
Can you repeat the question? So
Oh, like, do you need a certificate of appropriateness for a sign if you're going to remove it? My gut would, yes, you would, because here's something for you to think about, is it may be a route, if it's not a quote unquote historic sign, like if it's, say in the West End, businesses come and go, and we acknowledge that, so we try and be pretty lenient about that situation. But if you are removing a business sign that's been up there for a while, please submit to all of us. It may, for our standpoint, be just a routine maintenance because it's going to be a removal. But we like a paper trail. The city of Dallas loves a paper trail. we like them too. And so I would strongly suggest you come to us when it's a removal of the sign. Good? All yours. And I'm going to my next meeting.
Thank you so much. So just to be clear, if you do have a sign permit applied for, and it does require a landmark review or real estate or any of these other processes, we cannot issue the permit until these other processes have completed. So just to give you an idea of that. So our next presenter is going to be Marie Gordon. She's the Chief Real Estate Specialist with Public Works and specifically the Real Estate Department in right of way.
Hello, everyone. It was not my intention to stand up here. So. Hello, everyone. Again, it was not my intention to stand up here, but I'm here. Nice to meet everyone. And I am going to be very brief, but to the point. And any questions I can answer now, I will. And if not, I will make sure you have my name and my number. You're more than welcome to email me or to give me a call with any additional questions you may have. So let's jump right in. We're talking about the right-of-way and real estate. So a right-of-way license is required when a person or an entity wants to use any part of the public right-of-way. And right here, we connected some of our resources. So real estate license resources, we have chapter 43, that's for streets and sidewalks. We have Public Works real estate website. So you can go to the Public Work real estate website. You can click under licenses and you will find a license checklist. That checklist will allow you to see what is required for a license within the city of Dallas for the real estate department. It will tell you what's needed. It will guide you through. But one of the things we do recommend is that if you want to request a license with real estate department, one of our specialists would love to meet with you, to sit down with you, to make sure that you have all your documents together. Because if we don't get all the documents at one time through our intake team, then a lot of the applications, when it's incomplete, will be returned. So we don't want that to happen. Then we have a map of our current licenses. So I believe GIS is working on that, where if you go to our website and go to licenses, you'll find map of current licenses. If you click there, you see a lot of little red dots. Just click on one and it'll tell you that there's a license there in that area. So they are still uploading licenses as we continue to issue licenses. Typical sign requests, we have an over to your right. You'll see the different signs I have connected. So typical sign requests, we have a premise signs and blade signs. Just to say a little about those. I can't see it right. So blade signs, also known as projecting signs, can be mounted to a building, a facet, and illuminated. We have video board signs, and these are just typical signs, but we have other signs. Video board signs, and we have subdivision and monument signs. So just a little about that. Dallas City Code Section 43-115.2. A subdivision and monument signs are normally placed at the entrance of a subdivision to identify a residential subdivision. Also can be placed on entry walls or be constructed as a separate monument sign. The license fee is a one-time fee of $100 for the limit of the past ordinance. So over to your right at the top, I've shown you a premise sign with lettering. The next one is a video board sign, which protrudes out of the building, out from the building, side of the building, wherever it may be placed. And then the last one is the subdivision monument sign. The processing time is a minimum of 90 days with council approval. Typical fees. So we have subdivision monument signs. It's $100 per sign, one-time fee, plus a $100 application fee. All other signs non-refundable $750 application fee for air rights. So what's under there is our calculation. When you see equal area, area is the square footage of the licensed area that's being requested. Access value, we actually go to the Dallas County Appraisal District and we pull the value of that abutting property. Once we get the value of that property, then we do our math times 85 times 12%. If that fee falls under $1,000, our minimum fee is $1,000. All fees will be the greater of the calculated fee of the minimum annual fee, which is the $1,000, plus the $20 ordinance publication fee. And I believe that's it for me. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm asking these questions because these are questions that get. The temporary license fee, or not the license fee, but the temporary license while they're waiting that 90-day, period. How does that process work? How long does it take to get the temporary license? How long does it take?
Great question. What he's asking is about our temporary license. And how long does it take and what's the process? Well, with the temporary license, what if a consultant or a company comes in and say, hey, we need a temporary license because we have a grand opening and we need to give direction on a building. We would consider that as a temporary license because of the hardship. So the way that works is case by case basis. So it depends on a case by case basis, and it is approved by a director. And the time frame, we really don't like to give a time because we work the process as best we can. But the process administratively, while the permanent license is being pursued. So we'll move forward with the TLA, which is a temporary license. We call it a TLA. We'll move forward with the TLA while we still pursue the ordinance. And once the ordinance is granted, then the TLA becomes null and void. But we normally do that on a case by case basis. That answers your question? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So generally, real estate licenses, like she said, apply to blade signs, especially downtown, because a lot of those properties are built on the property lines. I think whenever we ask you to get a real estate license, hopefully now you get a little more idea of the next steps forward. But again, we can't issue permits unless all the things are in place. So next up, we've got Scott Bellum from our conservation districts. He is the senior planner over at Planning and Urban Design.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here representing our conservation districts. So we have our conservation district staff. We have Trevor Brown, who is our chief planner, Melissa Parent, another senior planner, myself, Scott Belling. We also have Sherry Steele Morrison, who is a senior zoning inspector who is assigned to, hey Sherry, who is assigned to conservation districts. I didn't list this on our contact information on the slide, but you can find it on our conservation district webpage, which rather than trying to give you that very long address, just Google it. Dallas Conservation Districts, and it'll take you there, and you can find our webpage with our contact information, as well as the process for applying for a CD work review. Any exterior work that is done on a property within a conservation district will require a CD work review and a certificate before you can obtain the permit, including sign permits. We have examples of exterior work include any new construction or demolition, additions or exterior repairs, remodeling, window and sometimes even door replacement, re-roofing, painting, fences, irrigation, pools and spas, any flat work including driveways, walkways and retaining walls, and also signs. So it's a very long list of things that we review. And all of our CD work reviews do need to be submitted online through PDocs. That information is readily available. There's a link to it on our webpage. And if you are, generally what happens is people take their permit application down to Okmok and realize, oh, my property is within a conservation district. So they will also probably be able to give you that information as well. You should be happy to know that there are no fees currently associated with conservation districts. So that's a good thing. Also, Kate was here earlier speaking about historic districts. That's also a very good thing because there's a lot of confusion between historic districts and conservation districts. Historic districts very often will have to go through the Landmark Commission. She didn't mention that sometimes if it's simple, they have a routine, what they call routine, where you just deal with staff. Whereas conservation districts, it is all staff review. So so you don't have to go through the Historic Landmark Commission or any commission. You just have to submit your online application. Generally, our turnaround time is around 7 to 10 business days. Sometimes that can be faster, and sometimes it may push out a little bit depending on what the project is. So when you submit your online application, we do have a CD work review checklist and application, which is combined together. The checklist has a list of submittal requirements for all of those exterior work that you might have. And if you have ever looked at our application, very notably, signs are not on there. That's primarily because we don't often get sign permit requests in conservation districts because they're mostly residential, and I can get to that in a moment. But I did want to just say that the information that if you are going to be submitting your sign permit, the information that you would normally submit for a sign permit application is going to be the same type of information that we're going to want to look at the conservation districts. We'll want to know the sign specifications, the dimensions, whether there is illumination, colors, whether it's attached or detached, pole sign or monument sign, blade sign, fixed sign, illustrations. There may be information such as the location on the lot. So they need a site plan or elevation drawings. Again, it's basically the same type of information that you would want to submit for your sign permit application is what we're going to want to look at. And as Kate mentioned earlier, historic districts are mostly residential. Conservation districts are also mostly residential. We have 6 of our conservation districts don't even reference signs. Some of them only refer to Article 7. But we do have a few of our conservation districts that have commercial properties that lend themselves to requiring or where tenants want signs. So those are the Bishop Arts Conservation District. We also have a CD9, which is M Streets, where there's a commercial property that is specifically called out in the ordinance. Something just to note is that all of our conservation districts are actually the base zoning. So the conservation district is the zoning. It's not an overlay like this historic districts. So that is really all I had for the conservation districts presentation.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody have any questions on conservation districts? So with any of these processes, feel free to, generally, we see it first with the sign team. And we can give you approval on whether those meet code or not, which will help you when you submit for these other processes. So let us know and we can help out with that. So the next process is board adjustment. And Nikki could not be here today, and the staff is preparing for next week for board cases. So I'm going to take over for this one. So here's a list of the staff. We've got the chief planner, which is Nikki Dunn. There's a senior planner, which is Dr. Kamika Miller-Hoskins. Our senior plans examiner, which is Nora Castaneda, and our project coordinator, which is Diana Barcoon, and our board coordinator, which is Mary Williams, and all of their email addresses are there. Just to go over a little bit about what we can do with board adjustment and signs. I know this is small, so I'm just going to summarize it. With signs, unlike many other cities, we're kind of limited as to what we can do. We've got variances and special exceptions. Variances, we can allow 10% above what the ordinance allows. So if the setback is 15 feet that's required, they can give you a variance of 1.5 feet. Or if your maximum height is 25 feet, then you can have 2.5 feet. We can authorize one, with the special exceptions, we can authorize one additional detached sign per I guess, over the limit under the current zoning. The 200-foot separation, if that is a requirement for your district, still applies, but they can grant you an additional sign. Sometimes this has come into play whenever there's a billboard on the site. It allows the tenant on that site as well to have a detached sign, provided there's enough square or lineal footage between the two signs. They can authorize on attached signs, and this is really it, up to 2 additional large letter words. So what that means is you can have 2 additional words over the 8 that are taller than 4 inches. So they're fairly limited into what they can do. With window signs, they can authorize you to cover the entire window with perforated vinyl. However, your wording is still limited to the bottom 1/3 of the window. So with movement control signs, they can authorize some additional height. They can authorize commercial messages to be put on those. So if you've got a tenant that you want to advertise on a movement control sign, you could get a special exception for. With monument signs, if a monument sign is required, they can authorize a non-monument sign. So if you're within 250 or 200 feet of a residential district, or excuse me, 250 feet of a residential zoning district, we require a monument sign unless you're in a non-business zoning district. The board can make a special exception to allow you a non-monument sign or a pole sign, depending on their determination and the evidence you submit. And just to go over the fee schedule. So we have special exceptions, which those are everything but the allowances over, like the 10% allowances over what code allows, which those are $1,200 per exception. And there's all the other side of the deal, which will be the variances. Those would be $900 a piece. There is a $10 fee for each notification sign. Since you do go through a public meeting process, you have to provide the public with notification. So we have notification signs, and there is an ordinance for those, depending on how many street frontages, how long they are, is how many signs you're going to have to post. There is a fee adjustment that can be done, but no fee refund will be made after the appeal has been advertised, which they do notification of. I'd have to look to make sure. I believe it's a 200-foot area. And they'll notify every property owner within 200 feet of the case, and they have a chance to respond. So just a little bit over the board adjustment process. Nikki laid out these slides. She labeled it as a hop, a skip, and a jump. So that first process is the pre-screen consultation. And basically what this is you'll come in and we'll do an internal review with you of all the documents you've got. We'll go over the code and make sure it is eligible for the variance. We'll go through and make sure that, again, all your items are in place. And I think they'll give you a gauge on any other evidence that may need to be gathered. So generally, there's, depending on the type of request, variance or special exception, there's different criteria as to what it's evaluated against. And it's your burden of proof to show how you meet those criteria and why you need the variance or why you need the special exception according to those criteria. After that, you go to intake process. So after all the items from the checklist are gathered and correct, and a plan set has been submitted, the intake process begins. This is where you'll receive a BDA case number. You'll pay the fees, and you'll receive the notification signs, and the month of your case will be disclosed to you. Generally, right now, based on these submission deadlines, we're running about, I believe it's 70 days between the date of submission to the actual hearing. It is kind of what those run. We're looking at those times to see what we can do to change those up some, but currently it's around 3 months before 2 to 3 months, kind of like a CA before those get through. After that, it's going to go to the case assignment, and you'll get an email from the planner. So your case will be assigned to a planner, and a meeting is going to take place where our development code specialist is going to review with the planner, and they're going to look at any case history within the area. They're going to start looking at other things within the area that relate to the case. And the planner is going to send you an email within a week of the case assignment, which Nikki indicates is very pertinent information. So it'll have the introduction to the planner. It'll let you know who the planner is. It'll have your briefing and hearing dates. The briefing and the hearing are generally on the same day. The briefing will take place before the hearing. You're welcome to attend the briefing, although you're not allowed to say anything during the briefing. It's a lot like City Planning Commission. Once the hearing starts, then you'll have a chance to speak on your case. So also in this email, you'll have deadlines and submittal instructions for any evidence letters. Generally, we encourage you to go around that 200-foot area with a petition and gather community feedback. Like that's very heavily weighed on a lot of these cases, is how the community feels about this exception or this variance. Not so much with signs, because most of the areas are really commercial, but it does play a lot of weight in the residential zone areas. So they'll provide some additional literature and instructions on the submission of acceptable documentary evidence and the applicants and your responsibility for proof. So pre-screen and intake are handled by the development code specialist, and the case research, field work, and case facilitation is handled by the planner. Once everything's intake, the planner is going to go around and build a case. I guess not really build a case, but build a case report that documents the area, anything relevant in the area for the board to consider, and then it goes to the board. And once the hearing occurs, the board will make the decision, and appeals are made to state and federal courts. So she did want me to point out that next Thursday, or not next Thursday, Thursday, August 31st, which is a couple Thursdays from now, they'll be having a board a lunch and learn on just Board of Adjustment. And if you're interested in that process, I strongly encourage you to attend. They'll go through step by step. You get to meet the staff and ask any questions that you may have over that process if you're looking at that process. So any questions or comments or anything we left uncovered? Dean?
On the SPSD temp submittals, temp signs, who do we submit that still through you?
So
If I haven't done my research and I just submit something and you go, hey, you need SB, you need a CA for this. What, do you kick that stuff to them? Do I submit my temp sign through Project Ops to you, and then you go, hey, this has got to go to them, or do I submit to them for a temp sign while we're going through the process of?
So the question is, as far as the submittal process for the temporary signs under CA review, the committee review for an SPSD. So those are submitted through project docs. They'll be separate. What we'll want to do is make sure that sign that you're submitting is eligible for committee. And then once we accept that application, you can submit and we can approve the temporary signs.
You have
So-
to have the main sign under review before you're gonna.
Well, we have to have looked at it, and at least in the process. Basically, we're looking to make sure that meets code. Anything that goes towards the committees or any of those, it's not a variance process. It's not any kind of exception. Signs have to meet code. This is an approval process above and beyond what the code says. They're looking at appropriateness. So as long as we can show that that meets code, even if your sign gets denied, your temporary signs can still be there for those 60 days. But once that's denied, you'll have to resubmit something else and move forward through that process.
But I submit my temp, on the temp sign part, I submit that still through project docs to you.
That is
You
correct.
get that to-
Yes, it all goes through project docs, all the same place. Just indicate that it's the temp sign for the CA process.
If you have multiple signs, it helps if you annotate which sign this is a temp sign for, because we have to compare and make sure it's no larger and.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank everybody so much for attending. We are going to post this slideshow on the web. It does have live links to everything we've discussed here, so all the websites are linked. We'll post this recording, so in case you need to show it to any of your staff, or if anybody has any questions, it'll be archived there on the signs page at the top, just like the signs 101. And we'll have it all there for everybody to look at and you guys to get information from whenever you need it. So I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you so much.
Make it work.